The slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy when incorrectly used, but there are slippery slopes. This is one of them.
Yeah, I don't. You keep talking about slippery phalluses, and I'm not. What does that mean?
Welcome back to the next episode of the Do Less podcast. Today, Jeff and John want to talk about their favorite, one and only Janet Yellen, and some of her most recent proposals. Which one of you wants to kick us off with a little intro of what's been going on the past few weeks?
Yeah, I wish her proposals were to me, because I'm in love with her.
Very fair point. She is beauty, she is grace. All right, John, why don't you tell us what's been recently proposed and where you think it's going to go?
Yeah, so she, came out. They're talking about the Build Back Better bill, or whatever it's called, $3.5 trillion of spending. Mm-hmm. She proposed this idea of taxing unrealized capital gains in order to fund it partially. And she's an economic powerhouse, so she knows what she's talking about, and she's got the country's best interests in mind. So I for one, give her a lot of credit for being so bold and brave.
You're exuding with sarcasm.
Nah, man, I'm serious. That's I'm always one to really respect the economists that get put in charge. They have a great deal of experience and knowledge and wisdom. So I'm just I'm glad we can witness such a brave act of just so brave. I just can't fully comprehend it. I think that's the thing. I don't think I fully comprehend the greatness I'm witnessing.
You're just happy to witness.
Yeah, it's like a Super Bowl every day with her.
I missed that because my headphones died, but I think we were talking about the was it the Build Back Collectively bill?
Build Back Better.
BBC.
I think it's Build Back Collectively. BBC bill.
Is it? Okay, yeah. And are you a supporter?
If I'm not, is it racist?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Well, Jeff, in a separate conversation, you were telling me you love BBC, so I don't know what you would have a problem with this.
It's a great news network. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
That's what we were talking
about. Sorry, I sidetracked us. But what did she actually say in the meeting? I think you wrote down the whole quote, right, John? You wrote it in your diary.
Let's play a clip.
Well, you see, guys, this is what we really need, because this is going to be great for the country, because, well, they've had it too good for too long, and, the amount of efficiency that can be added to this system.
She proposed that we tax unrealized capital gains.
And what does that mean?
Well, and she also said, so what it means is if you hold assets, stocks, or real estate, and they go up in price, and you sell them, you've just realized a capital gain, and there's capital gains taxes that you pay. If they're unrealized capital gains, that means your asset that you purchased went up in price, so you bought a stock at $10, it went to $20. Before you even sell it, you're on the hook for a capital gain. On the quote unquote on the wealthiest individuals. So she's saying billionaires that have options, or that have the majority or the minority equity of their company that goes up in value would be on the hook for potentially millions of capital gains tax, because she was saying that's their income. Like Jeff Bezos, we've talked about on the podcast before. His income is like his salary is like $70K. is what he gets paid from Amazon, but he owns whatever 51%, or is he majority shareholder? I don't even know, but he owns Amazon stock. That's his wealth. He owns the company. So she was saying if you can tax his unrealized capital gains, that means the amount that Amazon goes up would now trigger a capital gains tax for him, rather than waiting for him to sell out of his position. Because otherwise, taxing him on 70K, people get upset and they say, oh, they pay close to zero income tax based on their wealth. And it's like, yeah, because they don't have any income. It's capital gains. So she was proposing that don't wait till they sell. Tax them every year. Tax them millions and millions of dollars each year, based on the amount that their capital has appreciated.
Right. Which is obviously a very new idea.
I thought unrealized capital gains were just when you didn't realize you had capital gains.
Right.
So one question on how that would work. I don't know how detailed her proposal was, but what happens in a scenario where Jeff Bezos' Amazon stock goes up in value by 50% one year, he gets taxed on it, and then it goes down 50% the next year? Is there tax write-offs for unrealized capital losses?
So questions like that. Well, Jeff, do you want to take that one? Or
I don't think she had a very detailed proposal. Like, I think this is like one of those things where they're just like, putting something out there just to test the water, feel the air, like see what people think.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure some people had like a positive reaction to it, but like anyone who owns anything other than US dollars had an extremely negative reaction, because even if you own a home, right? If your house appreciates by $100,000, and then you owe whatever capital gains is on that, which is like 28% now or something like that. So that would be like 28K you owe in taxes. And then if it just drops 100K the next year, then you didn't make any money. Like, you just now had to pay 28K but you didn't gain any wealth, any income it was just volatility. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you add into that the fact that asset prices are being pressured up with all the, money printing and low interest rates. Like your average asset holder is going to get killed by a proposal like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't super specific, but I just don't see how there's any way to implement anything like this that isn't a complete disaster. So it is just baffling, though, that like, Janet Yellen's the Treasury Secretary. So, the authority on our finances, and to propose such a like preposterous way of paying for spending, it's just like I don't even really know what to make. It's like, it's astounding, because it's just like who the heck can afford to hold any kind of assets if you're gonna have to be paying insane taxes every year if they go up every year, because you don't have any cash to pay those taxes until you sell.
Right.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, the point you're getting at there, which is like the obvious problem, is if your home value goes up at $100,000 one year, that's not cash in your pocket. That's like a potential value of a house you could sell. Obviously, again, she's applying this to like billionaires holding companies, so not everyone with a $250,000 house, but in any event, that's not cash in someone's pocket. So charging taxes on money that's not in your pocket is a pretty difficult thing for anyone to stomach. But yeah, I think it's important to note that I think we all, the three of us anyway, see this as a very unlikely proposal to go through, to get passed, that is. Seems super unlikely, but really the problem that we're discussing here is how problematic it is for something like that to even be proposed, or how preposterous it is, to put it in your words, Jeff.
Yeah, and in fact, it's disqualifying in my opinion. So like, it's one thing, like Jeff, you mentioned, it's like she's just putting it out there to see how people react and like kind of gauge like public perception of like a new measure potentially. And it's like, I have a problem with that on its face, sure, but to say something so economically illiterate, or actually, more specifically, it's financially illiterate. Like this is completely like someone who's never owned a stock before in their life. It's like, it's not enough to just say like, oh, that was weird she said that, but she was just testing the waters. It's like somebody who says this should not be in a position, like we should understand that this person should not be in a position of authority on matters such as this. Like someone who's potentially imposing new taxes or proposing the new imposition of taxes, who brings this up, it should be like, oh, it's clear you can't be in charge. Like, oh, thanks for telling us. Yeah, get out. It's like,
Thanks for identifying yourself.
yeah, it's like,
As
oh,
unqualified.
yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, please get out. You're fired. Like she works for us. I mean, the way the Constitution is written, like it's government of the people, by the people. You know, it's like sorry, it's not working out. It's like we're your boss, and it needs to be a position. We need to put her in a point where there's no way she can ever be taken seriously again. Like, oh, you're the person who proposed capital gains tax on unrealized gains. Yeah, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. Like, you have no more bearing on what can be considered intellectual discourse in this realm because you've just disqualified yourself.
Well, Dale, you brought up a good point that I also wanted to address, which is you mentioned, oh, this is only going to be on like billionaires or whatever income bracket, or you know, and I think that's like a lot of people who would defend a tax such as this would say, you know, it's only on this top whatever. But I think to address that specifically, it needs to be clear that, okay, those people are the largest asset holders. If you now increase the cost of holding assets to the largest group of asset holders, they're going to probably sell maybe not all their assets, but some assets which are no longer, you know, sort of make sense to hold because, you know, just depending on how it shakes out, certain things aren't going to be as, you know, appealing. And that would cause a huge like supply shock, huge selling pressure, and that would affect everyone, right? So if there's a giant sale on assets, that's going to affect, you know, any participants in the stock market, real estate, whatever else is getting sold. And then that's just one side of the coin that affects it. The other side is inflation creeps people into higher and higher tax brackets. So, for example, the most obvious example is the income tax when it was first introduced was introduced under the exact same premise where it was only going to be on like the, you know, top 1% of income earners. And so, I mean, you know, you can say now that most people pay it, or actually it's technically not even most, but about half of Americans pay it. You might say that's a good thing. That's fine. That's not the point here. The point is, it was intended to only be for the top 1%, and it didn't stay that way because inflation creeps people into that higher income bracket, and there's a pressure to bring that bracket down because it generates more revenue for the government. So there's political pressure to do it. So I think like the point that it's only for these people and it's not, you know, I don't think that's like a valid point if people do try to bring that up,
because it's opening the door to
right,
just applying that to more and more people.
Yeah, people say that the slippery slope, which is essentially that argument. It's like it's a fallacy. It's like, oh, like imposing this tax on the wealthiest will then eventually, you know, open the door for them to be able to tax everyone else. And then someone might respond to that and say, oh, that's just a slippery slope fallacy, so that's not a logical argument. But it's like, no, that's the example, the income tax. Like, that was a slippery slope. once they passed the income tax on the wealthiest, they were able to then just expand it. Like every time, like during wartime, they were like, oh, it's wartime, so obviously everyone needs to pay the income tax. And then the people were like, if you said at that time, it's like, well, this is a slippery slope. You're just going to tax us in peacetime, on our income. Oh no, that's a slippery slope fallacy. You can't say that. It's like, well, what happened? It's not a fallacy. Like there are the slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy when incorrectly used, but there are slippery slopes. This is one of them.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. You keep talking about slippery phalluses, and I'm not. What does that mean?
So, yeah. That's all you could hear. It's like, I don't know what you said, but I probably agree with you because it has slippery and phallus in it.
Right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Jeff is just like, yep, yes. You can look. A lot of people have addressed this, and just there's so many examples of like why this is not feasible, or even if it was feasible, I'm sure it may be feasible by like some totalitarian government who just, it's trying to make a point that they can do it, and then just the absolute ruin that would come from it. But another reason, like logistically, why I don't think it would work is because you need to be assessed. So, right, you get your appraisal of your assets, and then you get levied a tax based on the appraisal, right? But that's the thing about assets, like especially stocks, like it's extremely liquid. So on one day you might have a gain, on the next it might be a loss, for a lot of people. So any day that you've been assessed on your, appraisal, the tax based on the appraisal, right? You can file an amended return like the next week or the next day even. So it's like on the day, it's like everyone's taxes are due April 15th or whatever. And it's like, if I submit my taxes in February and I have such and such capital gain, and then the next week I have less capital gain that I'm showing. Yeah, so everybody who has the ability everybody who's been appraised on their assets, the worth of their assets, can just wait a week as long as it's before the filing deadline and resubmit amended return. And so what does that mean for the IRS? They have no way of processing amended returns from like millions of people every week. It's just like,
Right.
Or it just everybody waits until the last day, at which point the IRS loses their efficiency of being able to process returns on a more like spread out through the year basis, and it's just all the crunch time at once. Everyone has to submit at one time, and it's just like there's just logistically like it wouldn't work like.
Yeah.
You can also apply for like extended time to submit.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so everyone would just do that. And then
Yeah,
do
I need an
whatever
extension
pops up.
because the company I own is submitting their earnings next week, and I think they're gonna not beat their
Yeah.
earnings forecasts, and so that my assets are gonna go down, and I want to pay those taxes, not these taxes.
Right. So it's a total logistical nightmare.
Yeah. It is kind of like, it just feels kind of like surreal to just have such like incompetence in like leadership. It's just like, it's not even realistic, like you just said, like there's nothing about this proposal that's realistic. Like if you want to increase taxes to pay for more, safety nets or whatever, it's like that's a debate to be had. But like this idea for funding it belongs nowhere in the conversation. So it's just so surreal to me that like the people we have occupying positions of authority just being so old and so incompetent. Like why are they all so old, and why can't we get someone in their prime who's like a serious person? It's so strange to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Like,
there's a lot of incentives against like smart, successful people taking those positions.
Yeah, that's true. But it's just like, I don't know, I can't imagine anyone I've ever worked for like coming up with this idea. You know what I mean? Like
Agreed.
they would all be like, "This is idiotic."
Well, the people that I could think of that would come up with it are just people that just hate rich people so much that they're blinded by their ability to.
Right, but it's like, I don't know. Any company I've ever worked for just knows how absurd. And it's not like all companies just are anti-government. There's plenty of like democratic
Wait, what do
or
you mean
left-leaning
company
people.
versus
I'm just
like
saying
individuals?
people who run businesses. I'm
Oh,
saying I feel like anyone,
yeah.
your average business owner would immediately identify how preposterous this is. But it's like
Right.
you could have left-leaning people or whatever running a business who would propose.
It kind of makes me think of like, obviously I wasn't really like, I don't think any of us were super politically conscious at the time, but like when like the war, like the war machine, like the generals and the like I don't know, like Colin Powell and people like them were like, oh, we need to go invade because they have weapons of mass destruction, and people are like, okay, like, yeah, I guess that makes sense, and then we did, and they didn't, and then everyone's just like, that doesn't make sense, and then they're just like, yeah, we really need to win this war, and then, like, I feel like people at that time were just like, well, no, like you're disqualified, and then they're just like, no, we just got to keep fighting this war, and it's just like what you were saying, Jeff, like this, it's like surreal in nature. It's like these, like we're just told this, and we're just like, no, I don't, like that's not true, and they're just like, yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's like no, like what you're saying is like wrong, and then like, yeah, it's really tough. We got to win this war, though. Don't you agree? It's like,
Yeah, it's it seems like a lot of government has become like a retirement plan for people.
That's pretty sadly true. Yeah, I worry especially about people in those positions regulating things or trying to regulate things like cryptocurrencies and NFTs and like social media companies. Like, there's plenty of examples of like those hearings with Facebook and Google and whatnot that are just like absurd questions getting asked. They're like so
Hilarious.
embarrassing, and like it's funny, but it's also like scary.
Right.
Like a lot of those comments.
it's so funny. Like if you just like distill down that conversation, it's not exactly what it was, but like if you can imagine the conversation being like, it's like, I want you to just leave me alone when I'm dealing with this like whatever I'm dealing with, Bitcoin or whatever, and then they're just like, no, explain it to me so I can tax you. So it's like, no, I'd rather just
Right.
like not be involved. I'd rather you not be involved. It's like, yeah. So anyway, tell me how it works so that I can take it from you. It's like
They're like, excuse me, Mark, is there any chance the Facebook can bring down the internet?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, those wires, they get crossed. It could be really bad, don't you agree? No, you're thinking about it all wrong. But if you could understand what I'm saying, like that would be really bad. So we're gonna have to take.
You're like, okay. Did you see the one? I don't know if it's a senator or congressman or something, grilling Zuckerberg, and he asked the question like, "What are you gonna do about Finstagrams?"
He's like, sir, I don't think you know what that is. So why are you asking about it?
This Finstagram must be stopped.
Yeah, what are you gonna do about Finstagrams? It's like that's like usually 15-year-old girls that don't want their parents to see their Instagram account. I don't know what you want us to do about that. That's what you're worried about.
It's like they're like, I've got 8,000 troops on standby. Just tell me when to invade Finstagram. It is pretty crazy, like, just how out of touch I feel like just everyone in Congress is.
Right.
And then it's like, and then he's like, well, now we're going to introduce the metaverse. And Congress is like, Very nice.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's not even Facebook anymore, right?
I think there's no way people stop calling it Facebook though, right?
Yeah.
I think what
Is this good for my Shibu Inu? My entire net worth is now in Shibu Inu currency.
Very fiscally responsible. Protect your family, Jeff. That was a good call.
since Trump has
Store
unveiled
of
that
value.
Trump is working on a social media platform to compete, and I think he should if like Facebook changes name. Well, I guess Facebook did change its name, so Trump should call his Facebook.
Yeah.
Are you not using that anymore? It's mine.
Do you think that URL's for sale?
Yeah, right.
We should go buy it.
Let's just buy Facebook and have it redirect to doless.com.
Yeah, right. DoLessPodcast.com.
Yes.
Oh, whoops.
Still plugged.
DoLess.com gets a
I
huge
just plugged
bump.
someone else's website.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced Mark Zuckerberg's a real human, though. You guys watch that press conference?
The unveiling one, or which
Yeah.
one?
Where he's like, we're meta now.
Yeah. I watched the clips
didn't-
about it myself. Thing. I saw the
Good.
barbecue sauce
Any
in
highlights?
the shelf.
The highlight, it's bizarre. It's like, I feel like I'm just not living in reality anymore. It's like, if it just felt like something from like a sitcom. It literally felt like like an episode of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, like just like very poorly scripted, like bad animation, and like it's like they're like trying to be subtle, and it's so in your face of like exactly every point they're trying to say. They're like, how do we tell them that like you can like transact in the metaverse? And then they're like, oh, look at this artwork. Oh, it's fading away. Oh, I have to go tip the artist so that it can remain here longer. And it's just like, okay, so you can tip people for their art. It's like, got it.
Didn't Facebook release a cryptocurrency?
Yeah. They were gonna do that like basket of
How's
currencies.
that compared to the various dog coins?
Yeah.
We should make a dog coin ETF, like just all the different coins with dog memes associated with it.
It has to be dogs, yeah.
Yeah. I just like to think there was like someone like legit at Facebook who was like behind all of like their whatever, like their crypto development. And then like that was right around the time when like the dog coins started like taking off, and they were just like, I quit. Like I'm not gonna be in this space because I'm actually competent. And then Facebook was like, oh, okay, we're not doing it anymore. It's like our guy, he left. We're not developing anymore.
Yeah, I feel like people who are big on Bitcoin, like, have got to admit it doesn't look good on Bitcoin for like its performance to be like outperformed by like memes.
Well, that's
true.
it's the like the most poignant thing, because that's what every Bitcoiner would tell you. Oh, the best performing asset ever, like ever in the history of man. This is the, and then it's like, yeah, but now this little dog coin is, and they're just like,
Yeah.
that's not a good metric to use. It's like we were saying that, we were telling you that.
Well, what they should do is just, I mean, what a smart investor would do is just track, like Reddit comments across cryptos and see what's getting the most, like hot likes and comments, and just buy it. Seems foolproof.
Let's get some closing thoughts in on Janet Yellen.
Would you like to start us off?
If you're listening, I'm available.
That's
I'm
to
sure
Janet
she's.
Yellen.
Yeah, I'm sure she's
Yeah.
listening.
I don't care how dumb your ideas are. You're the girl for me.
Janet Yellen, you got that sweet government pension. And that is never going to face capital gains tax. Yeah, my final thought would be it is like we joke, but it is like damaging. Like that's if anything, they're able to just say these things and just like walk it back, like, oh, never mind. We just wanted to see how you'd react, and it's just like there's
Yeah.
no recourse. Like, what is the recourse? It's like we have to hold them to what they've said. Like this, they can't say that stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
it's kind of
I
like
agree.
just what is the recourse, right? Like anymore, it's like you got, you know, basically two factions of like 70 million apiece who just hate each other, and it's like you try to get those two groups to be like, hey, listen, this person in this one position did something silly. Can we agree to get the next guy in to, put someone more competent? It's like, no, they fucking hate each other. So
Yeah,
it's just like,
Right.
how are you gonna get, incremental gains when it's like just no matter what, we got to make sure our guy is in or whatever. Like I don't. It just I feel like the polarization we have just allows for more incompetence because it becomes less important, I guess.
yeah, and it's almost like if the opposing side is successful, it's like get her out, and it's like okay, fine, she's out, and then they bring in someone else, and then the new person's just like okay, so we're talking about unrealized capital gains, and then just like hits the ground running with it. And it's like they're worse.
Yeah. I think to your point, I think it's pretty absurd that like proposals like this could just get like thrown out without any like they get thrown out for vetting, just like by like public opinion, even if they have like no chance of ever like getting approved or going through any process. But it does kind of nothing but tell you like the political leanings and thought processes of the politicians making these proposals. But
Yeah,
can be
and it's just like I don't know. It feels more like signaling than like anything else. Like
exactly. Yeah.
which is just I don't know. That's no matter what team you're on, that's not what you want. Government to be doing. You want it to be serious,
Right.
but it's like it's very unserious.
In an era where the entire pretense has dropped on the fact that like oh we need billionaires' money to run the government. It's like you guys just spent the last year running a $4 trillion deficit. It's like what did you have to take it from the billionaires? No, you just printed it. It's like this idea that we need to do this because it's going to help us function or be able to fund the government. It's like, well, we know that's not the case. Like that's a false pretense that we are all aware of now.
Yeah. If we need to take it from the billionaires, then we just need more billionaires.
Yeah. No, but it's like
So,
the funny thing is like I don't want to get too into like the MMT people, but the whole MMT thing is like you can just print it. You can print the money to pay for things, and I mean they're not wrong. Like you can do it that way, and that's kind of the point, right? It's like ultimately government gets paid for one way or another, and then taxes are essentially just create incentives, right? So it's like, you know, how you take the money from people is going to change behavior one way or another. And so you can play games with that all you want, but at the end of the day, do we want to spend the money and are we going to take the money or not? Like that's the question. So it's like to propose such a terrible way of paying for government is just like so bizarre to me because it's like just say okay we're going to raise income taxes, something we know that generally doesn't have super horrible incentives. Like I don't know. It's just weird. Or just print it, you know.
And they have the shield under the fact that it's like the idea of like taxing income is like you're taxing like work. Like if you want people to work less, well, how about charging them a penalty for every time they work and they get paid for their work? It's like that's what the income tax is. But there's no way to compare how much work would have gotten done without the income tax, because the income tax exists and there's no parallel realities that we can study where there is no income tax exists and be like, look, no income tax, look how much more work got done and how much more productive people were. It's like you impose this penalty on work and it had an effect and we have no idea what the effect was. So you can just go on operating as if it was like harmless, never really know how much harm it did cause. And the same thing goes for like if you tax wealth. It's like, well, now you're penalizing someone who gave society goods and services and in return took like titles and ownerships and paper like dollars, as opposed to consuming or spending or like whatever. So it's like those people like we have no idea how much it will impact it, but like on its face imposing a penalty on accumulating wealth is like, it's like I don't really understand how you could drive society into poverty faster than saying if you're wealthy we're going to take it from you. It's like it's like, wow, no one's wealthy.
No one. Yeah. Like to me, I don't know. Like the best way to pay for government is just like a negative income tax, and which essentially the way it works is, if you make a certain amount of money below it's like what you would consider like universal basic amount, you get extra, right? So you get like a negative income, right? Income tax essentially. So if you like make very little, you get like your taxes are essentially negative. And then you have essentially like a continuous, like a smooth slope upward across all incomes, right? And so that has no bad incentives because you always have an incentive to earn more, right? And so the debate can be around, okay, how much money, what should be like the slope and the intercept of that curve, right? Because, and then you can basically get rid of everything else, right? Because
for those of you at home,
to me,
for those watching,
it's sort of like
what he's referring to is instead of a graph that goes like this, like with income, the more income you get, the more money you receive. But there's like a point at which the slope tapers off. So it's like it's still increasing up to that minimum basic amount, and then it increases faster with the marginal. So I'll illustrate all that through post-processing. I'll draw the lines in space so that the viewers can see what I was...
Yeah, I don't know if that helped at all. But the point is, essentially, you have a guaranteed amount of income, right? Everyone likes to talk about UBI. And then you strictly will make more money no matter how... Like, if you earn more, you'll make more. There's no kinks in the curve. There's no nothing. So it's just, there's no bad incentives in that system. And then the debate is how much should we tax, right? That's the debate. But there really shouldn't be a debate about how we do it, because anytime you we have all these programs where it's like, public education, food stamps, yada yada yada. And we don't need to get super into a debate about this, but if you just think about it, right? You have a budget, and you have a constraint on that budget. So you can only afford a certain number of things. If I get money for school, then I have more money in my budget for other things. If I didn't get money for school, now I have less money in my budget for other things. So it's all fungible, and it's kind of irrelevant. Like if someone gave me money specifically for education or specifically for food, it's kind of irrelevant because I can just interchange that with my budget for other things. All it does is sort of create like weird incentives. And so the point is, how much money do we want to redistribute? That's the conversation. And there's a best way to do that, and they should just do that. And it's just, I don't know. It's like there's all this terrible, terrible nonsense. Like the tax code itself is like completely incomprehensible. That's why everyone has to buy TurboTax or whatever to like navigate it because it's just too complicated. So there's just all these horrible incentives in the system that like we could just do away with if we just simplified the whole thing. But whatever. It's kind of
I think I agree.
Yeah, like the philosophical, like we strayed so far away from the philosophical question of, it's like why do we need a government? It's like, well, if we pool resources and we pool decision making to a centralized entity, they can make decisions that are beyond the scope of any individual interest, and in doing so, they can make us better off. We would be at some point in the future, but with them making that decision, yes, there's more cost in the present, but we're that much more better in the future. Like, and then some, you know? Like the philosophical question of government is the government making decisions that will obviously cost us today, but will reap the benefits in the future, right? That is the question, should there be a government? We're so far beyond that. We're to the point where it's like, there is a government, and they are going to spend, and I hope I get some goodies out of it. You know, it's like we've completely lost the pretense that it's like they are investing in society's like capacity, so that in the future, we as a society are better off than we could have even been uh, through individual decision making.
Yeah, a lot of short-term thinking there.
And people who, if you align with like a politician doing that, it's like, well, of course they're doing that. It's like, yeah, they're human. They're only human. You blame them for that, but then if someone who you don't align with, it's like, do you see this? This person is corrupt. It's like, you see, you're making the same argument on both sides for just people that you align with versus people you don't. But it's like that question I asked like implies another question, which is like, can the government do that? And it's like you don't even have to address that to address the first question, which is, if the government exists, like like just humor us with the logic of how it is doing that. It's like they don't even bother like trying to say like, oh, we're investing in, public schools because we know public schools give you all the tools you need to succeed in this modern world we live in. So obviously another marginal dollar for public school is going to help everyone. And it's just like, they don't even pretend to say that because it's not even close to true. In fact, that's a good example of how it's so far the opposite. It's like public schools are so bad that we need to pay them more. It's like, wait a minute, but we were already giving you money to think of something good or to give us something good. And the thing you've given us is so bad that you need more money. It's like, it's like saying like, it's like if you gave someone a bunch of money to like build a business and the business just like is terrible and is losing all sorts of money and you like meet with them and you're like, I really fear that I'm not going to get my money back that I paid you as an investment for this company. And they're just like, yes, you need to give me 3 times the amount that you already gave me before it's feasible. And you're just like, yeah, it makes sense.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Here you go. Yeah, the only way this can succeed.
We didn't even mention the BBC bill was like $3.5 trillion. And like, I feel like these numbers just get thrown out now that are just like insanely big. And like, I mean, people pretend to sort of care, but it's like we all know we'll find a way to pay for this. We think, but it's just like, this stuff is adding up, and like we can't just keep spending ungodly amounts of money like this. Like,
that's another thing that is like disqualifying what Biden says it's going to cost $0 because it's not going to add anything to the deficit. And it's just like, I almost like don't even like didn't even think about bringing that up because it's like so like far, like that's so far past the point of like being justifiable. But it's like, all right, let's talk about it for a second. 3.5 trillion in spending. Absent that 3.5 trillion in spending, we will not get 3.5 in revenue. Like, let's just assume that what you mean is true. This bill will pay for itself, meaning every dollar of spending is offset by an additional dollar of revenue that the government will receive. It's like, so let's talk about like infrastructure. You build a bridge with that money. That bridge is going to generate its cost in like tolls in the like in by the time next year or what, like by the time the bill is fully like the funds are fully doled out. It's like, on its face, that's not even what an infrastructure spending project is claiming to do. Like, you don't build a bridge saying it'll pay for itself immediately. You build a bridge saying it'll pay for itself in the long run. Like, again, back to my question, like, the government's not making short-term decisions. They're making decisions that in the long run will be better off than any of us could have been absent them. And it's like, a spending bill isn't even supposed to pay for itself immediately. It's supposed to be the thing that doesn't pay for itself immediately because it is going to push us into a higher echelon in the future that, gives us that much more marginal revenue that it'll pay for itself in the long run. So it's like, you see what I'm saying? Like, that in itself is disqualifying. Like, you don't even understand what government spending is claiming to do.
Yeah, like it is kind of just absurd to say something will pay for itself immediately because it's like, what business opportunity exists where it's like you put in the investment and you get a return literally the minute you do it?
Oh,
Like,
I know what it is. It's Dogecoin. Dude, I never read the bill. That's probably what it says. The bill is probably
why
just
don't
like,
we just put 3.5 trillion into Shibu Inu?
right. Biden is just like, you guys think I'm outdated or out of touch, but I truly have my finger on the pulse. Just like, YOLO's 3.5 trillion.
Like they just switched the US dollar to like the dog meme on Instead of like Ben Franklin on the 100, it's like the fucking dog.
He's like, you guys don't understand. It's up 25% in the last 2 weeks.
What could go wrong?
Like, fuck it, you can't go down. At least that would be
But
entertaining.
yeah, that would be hilarious if we just replaced all our money with like different dog memes. I'm for that.
Found out
actually.
that Coinbase has an API. So we linked up our Treasury account with Coinbase, and our money printer is now directly tied to any downtick of Shiba Inu will be met with a $1 billion printing. An automatic printing signal will be triggered, and it'll go back up.
So what you're saying is go long on Dogecoin.
Yeah,
Alright. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, y'all.